Red Bull seems to be only getting more dominant through race by race, but we really haven't seen the true potential of this RB19, and Australia will be a real test for this team. With some upgrades coming and some insight on it, we might actually have a good picture of where this RB19 actually stands with everybody. In Jeddah, they were extremely fast. That Red Bull was blazing, with practically having a triple DRS effect, which I will get into, and also just having no drag on that car. Also performing super well in the corners and really on the straights. There were no weaknesses for it in Jeddah. This Red Bull team is looking to prove something this year, and it will be very hard for teams to come back, even with the ATR penalty. But before I get more into it, thank you all so much for subscribing. We just hit 1,700 not too long ago. Thank you all so much. I love you guys for just supporting the channel and being this amazing with me and commenting and liking. If you're not, please subscribe and like and comment. I upload practically every single day. Make sure to hit that notification bell as well to catch my uploads right on time. Now let's get started into this Red Bull video. So in my last Red Bull video, I talked about really the pairing, but I didn't really talk about the car. I want to talk about the car a lot more today and what's to come for this car. As we know, this RB19 has so far kind of really turned heads almost away from Formula One by how strong this car really is. With Max and Checo performing so highly, and maybe even being in the championship battle of the year, it is expected that this car is going to draw heads away because of its dominance. I would say this car is just as dominant as W11 from what we have seen so far. Does this mean this car will be better than the W11? Not necessarily. Does it mean it could be better than W11? It could be as well. I mean, it depends on how it upgrades throughout the whole entire year and where this car really stays. I do believe this Red Bull car is dominant, and it does show in the two races that we've had so far. But Australia is going to prove something for this Red Bull team that I think a lot of people don't know about, but I have a little bit of insight on why Australia might be either a real domination or a close battle. Now this Red Bull car, it's shown a couple of things. First of all, it's shown that its rear is the best on the grid, meaning its stability and what it can really produce out of that rear. So far, we've gotten an insight on the actual Aston Martin car having somewhat of a similar floor to the Red Bull of last year, and why its floor is a little bit different to Red Bull's in worser ways. Red Bull has a gearbox that is smaller than most of the grid and pretty tiny but very aggressive. That's why we're getting these drive shaft issues, and we might see some reliability issues throughout the year for Red Bull, but at the cost of having extreme performance. And they sorted it out pretty quickly last year, even when their cars ended up dying in the first race. And it was in Australia that Max lost it. Sure, there might have been like one more DNF with Checo in Canada, but still, it was a result of insane pace and not being able to get caught by anybody else. Even Carlos tried to catch Max that whole entire race in Canada and wasn't even able to compete closely. The Red Bull car has that triple DRS effect that I talked about, which comes from the rear diffuser, which I just talked about with the floor is the biggest thing. Up on the screen, I have a picture of what the RB18's floor looked like. Now, we don't have a picture of the RB19's floor, but this is already going to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about with the floors and why Red Bull is so extreme in comparison to a team like Aston Martin. We know that Red Bull is almost ahead of its competitor really by almost 10 kilometers an hour. 10 kilometers on the straights with DRS open. It generates it from the actual diffuser itself, the one beam wing that they actually brought, which was different to the whole entire grid, and most teams can't even run it due to lack of downforce, and the way that its DRS actually performs in its efficiency. Haas and Red Bull are the only teams to actually get a 31% on its DRS efficiency. In comparison, the second fastest team in Jeddah actually had a 20.5, was it 5 or 7 DRS efficiency. So that is a whole 11% difference. And why we really saw that Aston Martin car could not compete on the straights with Red Bull. When it was a safety car reset and Checo just took off, Aston was nowhere close. And I mean nowhere close. Meaning that straight line speed, and it's really what I wanted to get into, its braking and just bolting off of the line is insane. It's even been talked about recently in the media right now that where this performance is really getting extracted at is in the braking. Something Red Bull has always been great at because they love to have drivers that go for deep dive bombs, Daniel Ricciardo, and Max Verstappen. So brakes are a key. I mean, it's really any Formula One car, brakes are key, but Red Bull really knows how to push those brakes to the limit. Its braking and cornering speed is still high. While Aston Martin might be just as good as them, it is a pretty close battle, and with having that much straight line speed, Red Bull can afford to be a little bit slower in the corners. But now with the race, with medium speed and low speed corners for most of the race, and some high speed, but not really. I mean, I guess Sector 3 can kind of classify as pretty high speed with this very last corner. It's still going to be a trickier race for Red Bull if we're going off of races 1 and 2. They're bringing upgrades. Now, I do know that a huge upgrade is coming in Baku for the floor. Here, I think it's just going to be upgrades kind of like what they brought to Jeddah, where it's going to just stabilize the car more, and they can go for better downforce because their DRS is so efficient. So this is why we're going to see the car be a laser in this race. Even if they don't qualify first, maybe due to Aston Martin having a little bit more grip, let's just say, that pace. Red Bull's DRS efficiency, its way of keeping tires, its braking, it's going to catch up to anybody on the field, and it will be tough when they start leaving everybody behind because of how efficient that car is. And that car genuinely just is a magnet to the ground. I've seen even a comment saying practically just being an asphalt lawnmower, which it practically is. It's just picking everything up and just being planted, giving Max Verstappen the perfect car for both overtaking and really just perfectly driving. Its brakes are super sorted, as I keep mentioning. With a track like Australia where braking is super important, we will see the biggest strengths out of this car. And there is still more to come, and they're still expecting 3 to 5 tenths with this new floor upgrade in Baku, which is already ridiculous considering the team is practically ahead by almost 7 tenths in race pace against just Aston Martin because everybody else is so far behind. More unique things coming to this car. Like its one beam wing that we've just now seen, there's probably a lot more things that Adrian Newey has stacked in the store for different tracks that we go on. They are one of the only teams that actually brought an upgrade slightly to Jeddah and changed its wing completely. Mercedes only trimmed the top, and so did Aston Martin, so we didn't really get to see the full straight line speed out of those two teams. Were they slower? Yeah, I mean, I don't think a new rear wing would have put them up 10 kilometers, but it would have had them probably closer. Red Bull was drastically ahead of even Ferrari, who had a new rear wing, and they were the team to beat in Bahrain when it came to top speed, showing that this engine is massive, its gearbox is super aggressive, and so is its straight line efficiency. It's just such an efficient car, and with upgrades coming super soon, I don't know if there's a team that can actually catch up by upgrades unless this car has a lot of reliability issues. This Red Bull team is ready to eat for 2023 and really destroy the grid in its efficiency and speed. And I'd like to hear what you guys really think about the whole entire situation right now happening with Red Bull's car and how they are so quick. Like I said, the main key things to point out is their floor, very simple, but insanely efficient. Most teams on the grid, especially Mercedes have a very complicated floor, and look what it's done to them. Super downforce, but really nothing else. Ferrari is changing their floor completely going into Imola. Red Bull has stuck with practically the same floor as the RB18, hence why I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and how it's able to just pull out the most efficiency out of it. The car is simple on the bottom, but super extravagant on the top. That's why we get such a huge undercut, and the airflow going through the car is just extremely streamlined and gives that extreme efficiency. No other team can really perform like this, and I expect a lot of teams in 2024 to start going for that huge undercut like Red Bull is and maybe simplifying their floor a bit. I think that's what Mercedes is really brewing up. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you guys agree with my statement? Do you guys think that Red Bull is just out of the league to every other team? Let me know your thoughts down below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.